everybody, it's Ann BB. Happy New Year. Today is January 1st, 2020. I'm Barb Hammer, and I'm finally back to doing political videos. So I'm kind of in limbo here physically. I'm been traveling, but I'm not actually back home. So I don't want to really go into the gory details. I'm in a hotel room and probably for a month or more while my apartment is being repaired, renovated. So I haven't officially been rent-evicted, which is a big problem here, but I've been displaced, living out of a suitcase. So I'm here for a while trying to figure out the whole situation. Not just me, my husband and I. So he's been here for a while I was traveling, and I came back to this. So anyway, I'll make do with whatever is going on, but I'm very lucky. I'm not homeless. I'm staying in a very nice hotel room. It's not home, so it's more of an inconvenience than anything else. So I'm not going to complain. Yeah, I'm very lucky. Anyway, so today I want to talk about revolutions, I guess. So today is the 61st anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. And so I played the Cuban national anthem, which I had never heard, to tell you the truth. It was new to me. So it's called La Bayamesa, and which means, I guess in English, the Bayamo anthem. And it's a very old anthem. Dates back to like 1868, predates the Cuban Revolution by a century, and it's in a period. So in Cuba, they were fighting for decades for independence from Spain, long before the Spanish-American-Cuban War, as they call it. And even after the Spanish-American War, when Cuba supposedly won independence, it became a virtual colony of the United States. Now, the U.S. Had its own American Revolution, which wasn't really a revolution from the whole system so much. You could say it was a revolution, but the American Revolution, there was still the exploitation of slaves, and so that didn't stop. So Cuba was actually, it's interesting, when you go to Cuba, you'll learn a different version of history. So the American colonies and then the U.S., after the revolution and the U.S., the United States was established, they had profited from slavery in Cuba. So European slave traders brought African slaves to Cuba for the sugar plantations, and they produced molasses, which was sent to the colonies and then the United States to make, for the distilleries to make rum. And then that was shipped to Europe, and the vicious cycle continued that way. Anyway, so Cuba didn't really gain independence until the revolution on January 1st, 1959. So I was born in 1959, so I'm almost as old as the Cuban Revolution. So I was in Cuba last month, and it's always interesting. I always pick up things. So I'm going as a tourist, more or less, but officially I go as a journalist, and I like to just observe everyday kinds of things and enjoy Cuba. So it's very interesting. So they had a real revolution, and they broke from that colonial past finally. And I saw a video on Twitter from Telesur about the Cuban Revolution. So I think I'll play that right now. If it'll come up, there it is. Okay. So Telesur has some very good videos sometimes. And they actually woke me up to the events of Tiananmen Square in China in 1911. So there's another good video. Play this now.
Fuerza de los Estados Unidos. Nosotros no cedemos ante esa posición de fuerza. Fuerza de los Estados Unidos. Nosotros no cedemos ante esa posición de fuerza.
Okay, so there's that. So the Cuban Revolution. What's interesting when you go to Cuba and in Havana, you will see lots of memorials that predate the Cuban Revolution. So it's not as though these revolutions they wipe out all their historical heroes or memories from the past. So they have all these memorials in Havana that predate the Cuban Revolution, and that's the thing about a lot of like these anthems like the Cuban national anthem that predates the Cuban Revolution. And so there, a lot of these countries, there's always unofficial national anthems. So I guess the one for Cuba would be Guantanamera. And the words of Guantanamera were written by Jose Marti, who is the Cuban independence hero. So Cuban expats in the US and other parts of the world, and Cuban revolutionaries, they admire this song. It's very good. This version, I won't play it, but this is my favorite version by Joan Baez. Forget the one by Pete Seeger. That's crap. So I'm not going to play this because it's copyrighted. So anyway, I would recommend you listening to the song. And it's not about fighting. That's the thing about a lot of national official national anthems about fighting, and that's fine. Depends what you're fighting for. But Guantanamera is not about fighting. It's just love of country, really. Um, and on the theme of revolutions, so I've talked about color revolutions a lot. And so I'm just going to stay on that theme of revolutions. So today's the anniversary of the Cuban Revolution. There was another revolution that was recently celebrated, and that is the Chinese Revolution. So that happened on October. There was another anniversary, important anniversary, on October 1st. So October 1st, 2019 was the 70th anniversary of the 1949 Chinese Revolution. And that was another break, just like the Cuban Revolution. That was a big break with that country's colonial past. And so they released a movie to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Chinese Revolution, and I went to that movie the week that it was released in North America. So I saw it maybe on like the, I don't know, it was the week it was released, so the week of October 1st, and I saw it some just a few days later. It was very interesting. Now, of course, it's propaganda, but it's not the kind of US propaganda that you see in a lot of Hollywood movies where it's glorifying war and that sort of thing. So it was an anthology. It was a number of different stories in one film. And one was, and they didn't have to do with war. So the first one is about when there was a ceremony to celebrate the revolution on October 1st, 1949. And then there was another one about the return of Hong Kong back to China. So the UK had to return Hong Kong to China on July 1st, 1997. So there was a story in this film, My People, My Country, about the return of Hong Kong to China. And so that's interesting. So I've been talking a lot in my videos and on Twitter about the Hong Kong color revolution that's going on right now, or attempted color revolution. And so they're trying to keep Hong Kong separate from China. So right now there's one country, two systems, but they really want to keep Hong Kong very separate. It's still, I would call it still a colonial um, outpost on the edge of China. And it's still under the British colonial system, and all the problems of that are being blamed on China itself. And there's a lot of demonization of China. And I'm trying to debunk a lot of that propaganda. And also, Scott Creighton on his Church Dog 42 channel has done some very good videos about all the propaganda about China. And so he's been debunking it too. So I would recommend his videos to you if you're interested in that. Um, so anyway, so someone actually asked me. So people have asked me, what is a color revolution? So a color revolution, like what you're seeing in Hong Kong, is where they make it's being made. So you will see protests, and they are made to look grassroots, popular uprisings, but they are actually Western regime change psyops. So they are astroturfing. That's the term. So astroturf is fake grass. Get it? Grassroots astroturf. So that's what a color revolution is. And they've been going on for decades. And I have talked about Gene Sharp. Gene Sharp was an academic who worked for the CIA, and he kind of perfected the color revolution. So you'll see a lot of fake protests around the world. They're made to look like popular uprisings, and they're becoming increasingly common, I must say. But it's sometimes it's hard to tell if it's they're fake protests or real protests, and sometimes they'll take authentic grievances and authentic protests and hijack them and turn them into a color revolution. And that happened actually. Sometimes you'll have like a hybrid. So in Bolivia recently, last year, Evo Morales' government was overthrown in a military coup, a U.S. military coup, but it was also made to look like a color revolution. So that was a hybrid. So that's what's interesting. So Gene Sharp, he perfected the color revolution, and his first color revolution was actually Tiananmen Square in 1989, and I did a video about that. That was not a popular uprising for democracy, freedom, and human rights. It was a CIA and MI6, British and US and British intelligence color revolution. So they had trained student protesters in Hong Kong to lead an uprising in China trying to overthrow the People's Republic of China. So, anyway, um, moving on. So, I'm talking about revolutions. So, this movie was very good, very interesting, some interesting stories. And actually, in the film, they perform what is the unofficial national anthem of the People's Republic of China. And it is called My Motherland and I, or Me and My Motherland. And it's a very sweet song. It's not about fighting. So the official national anthem of the People's Republic of China predates the revolution. It's called the March of the Volunteers, and I played it in one of my previous videos. But there's an unofficial anthem that was written after the Chinese Revolution. It's very sweet. It's not about fighting. It's just talking about love of country, your homeland. So anyway, I'm going to play a little bit of that here. It's not copyrighted, so it's safe. And this was performed at the celebrations on October 1st, 2019 for the 70th anniversary. So this is in Tiananmen Square. I'll play a little bit of this. Okay, that's the song. So you get the idea. It's a very sweet song. It sounds kind of Western, so it's, I don't know, maybe it doesn't sound real Chinese, but very sweet song. And anyway, so revolutions. So the Cuban Revolution was a real break from the colonial past in Latin America. Chinese Revolution was a break from the colonial past in Asia. Very important. And since I talked about the overthrow of the Evo Morales government, what's very interesting is that China was an important factor in the reason the U.S. had to felt it needed to overthrow Evo Morales' government in Bolivia for Western big business interests. So China actually is offering countries in Latin America and Africa and Asia a better deal. So they're not forcing these governments to change, to neoliberalize their economies, their governments, privatize. They don't expect them to undergo IMF reforms. They just do business with them. more fairly than the US and the West does a lot of times. So that was a big thing, that a big factor that had to do with the overthrow of the Evo Morales government. So they were negotiating with China for a deal with the for Bolivia's lithium resources, which are very important in high tech. So anyway, so Cuban Revolution, Latin America, China, Chinese Revolution, color revolutions. I think you know where I'm getting at. So they're fake revolutions and real revolutions. Color revolutions are fake. And unfortunately, sometimes they take legitimate grievances, real protests, and they hijack them for nefarious purposes, like neoliberalism, privatizing government for big business interests. Okay, so the American Revolution was kind of a revolution. It was more a independence movement revolt from British monarchy, but it didn't really systemically change things. And you could argue that the American Revolution has been reversed. There's another type of political revolution that's fake, and that is the Bernie Sanders political revolution, supposedly. So I was a big supporter of Bernie Sanders in 2016, but I learned a lot in 2016, and Bernie Sanders was not going to change anything. And he actually won the Democratic Party nomination, but he did not contest all of the election fraud during the Democratic primaries. And his role was to sheepdog for the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, and drum up support in the Democratic Party, and then shifted to Hillary Clinton for her to defeat the Republican nominee, who was Donald Trump. Well, that didn't happen. That didn't work out so well. Anyway, so Bernie continues to talk about a political revolution. And in the new year, I would really wish that people just kind of break away from the slavery of the election system in the US and from voting. Voting in the US and in Canada, I've learned, is not going to change anything. So, unfortunately, Bernie is. He's out there campaigning for the DNC slush fund. He's bragging about how much money he's raised, but nothing's going to change. And the Democratic Party would rather see Donald Trump be reelected than to see someone who would really change things the way Bernie talks about, but Bernie's not going to change anything. Anyway, I guess that's my video. So, revolutions, political revolutions, real and fake, color revolutions. So, I hope people understand better when I'm talking about color revolutions. And so the Cuban and Chinese revolutions were real breaks, systemic breaks from colonialism and from Western exploitation, I would say. Anyway, so I guess that's my video for now. And so this is take two. I had a problem with my other software. I was trying some old software that I used to use, but I ended up having the same problem. So I'm back to this software again. So I think take two is a little bit better than take one was. Anyway, practice makes perfect. Anyway, thank you for listening, and Happy New Year again. And I hope this year will be better than the last. That's always the wish. I hope this year will be better than the last. And I want to thank all my new subscribers. And I know I know the majority of my new subscribers have been Chinese. So I will continue to talk about China and try to debunk a lot of the propaganda about China and speak the truth about China. But I will also be talking about the truth in Latin America and other parts of the world, including the US and Canada. Anyway, so thanks for listening, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.